Breaking domestic and election news of the morning. The Supreme Court has ruled on Donald Trump's ballot eligibility, and in a shocker, they're saving him. Okay, that's not really a shocker. I guess maybe what the shocker might be is that it was technically unanimous. 9-0, Colorado cannot bar Donald Trump from their ballot. He's back on just in advance of the vote, which will happen in that state coming up within 24 hours. And that's really not that surprising. But we are gonna jump into some elements of this that maybe are a little bit surprising. And the things that I think are most interesting about the ruling, it's almost not even the stuff that they ruled on, although there's a bit there. It's the stuff that they didn't. They are completely uninterested in whether Donald Trump participated in an insurrection. They don't have anything to say about it. They don't have any theories. They don't seem to think that it matters at all. And they don't really address it literally at all. They also almost entirely shy away from one of the biggest legal questions that I even found to be maybe compelling, if moronic, is that clause of the Constitution that was being used by the Colorado challenge to him to keep him off doesn't apply to the president. I think it's stupid that it wouldn't, but it doesn't specifically say that it does. So that could have been an easy, technical, legalese way to allow him back on without ruling more broadly about other aspects of this. But they didn't even really do that. They were by far most interested in who it is that is supposed to adjudicate and enforce this area of the Constitution. And they did rule in that area. In fact, they went even beyond what a lot of the liberal justices who aren't like technically dissenting, but they're kind of dissenting while voting in support of what the majority is largely saying. So we're gonna have some of what they had to say about that, about how the conservatives have gone beyond where they strictly speaking needed to, which is weird because they're strict literalists and they don't believe in judicial activism. So weird.
Before we continue with the story, we depend on members to keep on going. Don't wait. Click join now on YouTube.
But Francesca, top line story, Trump is back on the ballot. What do you think?
I mean, we knew he was going to be. I think that sadly, whether or not these justices were appointed by Democrats or Republicans, they are part of an establishment, part of 9 people that have outsized and insanely indeterminate decision-making power over our everyday lives. And here you go, and this is not just a win for Donald Trump, this is the win for normalcy. We must preserve normalcy because we don't want to admit that something insanely abnormal like January 6th, like the Confederate rising up against the Union, right? Whatever happened in this country, even though it just did, and I just named it, and that's why we even have the 14th Amendment right there. And they want to pretend, and often I think we have to remember before we get into the details that guys, we have to save ourselves, that we the people, we are not being looked after, we are not being cared for. Our Constitution is not being honored by the people who were elected or appointed to uphold the Constitution. You don't need, anyway, we'll get into the details, but all to say nah, man, the 14th Amendment was written for a reason. And I hope going forward, whether it's expanding the courts, whether it's actually having an amendment to that amendment to the amendment, that we can truly hold people accountable when they, aggress upon our very democracy.
Yeah, no, I mean, I still think, maybe I'm a wide-eyed optimist. I think that we can defend the country against people that aggress in that way. If they're like commies or something, if they're challenging capitalism, if there's a few things like that, but if they largely want to continue the economic status quo, let's give them a pass as a treat. That's what I feel. And we are gonna dive into the specifics, but I just top line for me, we never doubted that this was what they were going to do. From 1,000 miles up, that they were gonna keep him on the ballot. We had no doubt about that. We maybe foolishly thought that they would pair it with the absolute immunity thing, but in every way they could have. This is the worst version of what we thought would have happened. They're not pairing it with the absolute immunity thing. This instant, man. We heard your arguments. We came back super responsive. But the thing about like the idea that the president could go around decapitating people all day, every day, and he couldn't be charged for it. We're gonna need a couple months on that. We need to think about that because it's compelling, the argument. So like it's completely inconsistent in that way. And again, they're not even using like the technical thing of, well, it doesn't say the president.
Right, which is so sad. I'm glad they're not using that, but yes, go on.
No, it would be sad, but at least that would sort of be saying, okay, it's ridiculous that it wouldn't fit the president.
Yeah.
But that's what it does, not this. That's not what they're doing here. What they're doing is, yeah, that's technically in the Constitution, but it's like really inconvenient and like, I don't know, like if we were to do that, like some MAGA people would be mad. So like, let's mostly pretend that it's not there for the president. That's what they're doing. They're doing like the opposite of what one would think they'd do if you had been raised to think that the Supreme Court was like nonpartisan, non-biased and all that. They jump into the stuff of like, oh, is it disenfranchising people? Well, yeah, theoretically, if capital punishment removes the ability of the person that you killed to run for office, and then nobody could vote for him. So I guess we can't have capital punishment because that's disenfranchising potential voters. It's a stupid, nonsensical argument.
What about felons? I mean, what about felons?
What about felons?
Who are disenfranchised constantly in states around this country. And yes, states' rights. Remember how they were really into states' rights? This was about Colorado specifically and their Supreme Court. And same with other states. Like, aren't we for states' rights? Didn't we kick the Dobbs decision and reproductive rights to the states?
Temporarily.
Right,
well, and Francesca, well then, the Constitution says you can only run for president twice. Yeah, but if we stop them at 2, then it's disenfranchising people who want to vote for them a 3rd time. It's not a serious argument, okay? It's a convenient argument that it's convenient in one of 2 ways. Either they're seriously worried about political violence or whatever, and they think that judicial cowardice is the only way to avoid it, which sucks in its own way, or it's convenient because, Trump still gets to run for office and maybe he'll give us more tax cuts and maybe he'll be president. So a couple of these conservative justices can retire without worrying about a Democrat replacing them. It's convenient in one of those ways at the very least.
And I think you basically articulated how it's convenient for either liberals, which is the first way of like, we're afraid, that there'll be political violence. You mean like the one we already saw, the one you should be ruling around right now? And then the second thing is, I want a conservative in power, and that would be the conservative justices. So either way, the people are effed, and as if there hasn't already been political violence. But yeah, let's keep going.
And by the way, if you are worried about political violence, okay, in America, maybe just end the Trump thing because of political violence that is, I think, from a reasonable point of view, directly linkable to a candidate or inspired by his ideology, which is violent and never makes apologies for that. What does Trump represent? 99% of that? Sure, you've got your coups and stuff like that, but you've got your conspiracy theorists going and shooting up places. You've got people mailing pipe bombs to his enemies. You've got people trying to assassinate the spouses of political leaders who turn against him. Like he is the font of all of this. But sure, leave him on the ballot. Surely he'll never coup again.